Ever wondered why a guy pulls away just when you thought things were going perfectly? It can feel like an emotional roller coaster. You're not the only one who's experienced this. It's confusing and frustrating, especially when you start thinking they've lost interest. But here's a thought. What if their distance is actually a sign they're falling for you? Men often behave in ways that can seem hard to understand, especially when emotions are involved. Maybe you might find yourself questioning their feelings, trying to figure out if they like you or if you're imagining things. It can feel like they've disappeared right when things were getting good. But what if there's more to it than just playing games? In this video, we'll take a closer look at 10 psychological reasons why men act distant when they're falling for you. You'll discover the surprising truths behind their behavior. And trust me, they're not trying to make things complicated. Let's uncover the psychology behind this mysterious behavior. When a man starts to fall for you, he may feel a sense of emotional exposure and vulnerability. It can be terrifying for him. Men often view vulnerability as a sign of weakness or something that makes them feel out of control. This fear of being emotionally exposed can make them uncomfortable, especially when they're developing deep feelings for someone. As a result, their instinct might be to retreat emotionally. It's not that they don't care about you. It's their brain's way of protecting them from potential hurt. The distance they put between you is often a defense mechanism meant to shield themselves from feeling too vulnerable. So, when they act distant, it's not a sign that they're backing away from the relationship. It's their way of trying to protect their emotions. Men are often seen as less emotionally expressive, but that doesn't mean they don't feel deeply. When emotions run high, they need time to process those feelings on their own. Unlike women, who might talk things through to make sense of their emotions, men tend to withdraw into themselves when they're facing intense feelings. It's not about rejection. It's just their way of dealing with what's going on inside. When a man starts acting distant, it might seem like he's pulling away, but really, he's just trying to sort out his emotions in private. This space allows him to think things through without feeling overwhelmed. So if he's quiet or seems detached, it's not because he's lost interest in you. He's just working through his feelings before he can fully open up and share them. When a man starts developing feelings for someone, his brain goes into overdrive, making sure he doesn't come across as needy or overly dependent. Men often fear being seen as clingy or desperate, which can make them uncomfortable when emotions get involved. This fear is strong enough that it can cause them to pull back, even when they're falling for you. In an effort to avoid appearing too attached, he might act distant. This behavior is his way of maintaining a sense of independence and control in the relationship. By creating some space, he reassures himself that he still has his own life outside of the connection you're building together. So when he pulls away, it's not a sign of disinterest, it's simply his way of keeping his balance and protecting his sense of self. Men can be deeply afraid of rejection, especially when they've invested emotionally in someone. When they start developing real feelings, the fear of putting themselves out there and not getting the same response can be overwhelming. The thought, what if she doesn't feel the same, can trigger anxiety, leading a guy to pull away, even when he's already emotionally invested in you. To protect his ego and avoid the pain of rejection, he might distance himself. This behavior is a defense mechanism to shield him from potential heartbreak. If he senses that things might not work out or if he's unsure of your feelings, he may act distant as a way to protect himself. It's not about losing interest. It's about protecting himself from the emotional pain that could come from rejection. Men often have a strong desire to feel in control, especially when it comes to romantic situations. When emotions start to intensify, they may feel a need to take a step back in order to regain control over the relationship dynamics. Falling for someone can feel overwhelming, and the idea of things progressing too quickly can make them anxious. By pulling away, a man creates space to control how fast or slow the relationship moves. This allows him to ensure that he's not rushing into something he might not be ready for or can't fully control. So when he acts distant, it's not because he's losing interest. Rather, it's his way of holding back to maintain control over his emotions and the pace of the relationship. Some men fear that falling too deeply for someone might cause them to lose their sense of identity or independence. The idea of becoming so emotionally involved that they no longer recognize themselves can be frightening. In an effort to protect who they are, they may pull away when they start developing intense feelings. This sudden emotional withdrawal is their way of maintaining balance. It's like a moment of self-preservation to remind themselves that, despite their growing feelings for you, they are still in control of their own identity. So, when he distances himself, it's not about losing interest. It's about ensuring that he doesn't lose who he is in the process of falling for you. VA. Past heartbreaks and trust issues can significantly influence a man's behavior when he starts developing feelings for someone new. If he's been hurt in the past, those old wounds can make him hesitant to fully open up again. The fear of being hurt once more can trigger him to act distant, even when he's beginning to care for someone. This emotional retreat is a protective mechanism. He might distance himself as a way to avoid getting hurt again, even if he's forming strong feelings for you. That when he pulls away, it's not because he doesn't care about you, it's his past experiences telling him to proceed with caution. Men often fear that becoming too emotionally involved in a relationship will limit their personal freedom and independence. The deeper a man falls for someone, the more he may worry about losing control over his own life. This fear of being tied down can cause him to act distant as a way of preserving his sense of freedom and personal space. When he pulls back, it's not necessarily a reflection of his feelings for you, but more about his need to maintain the illusion of control over his life. He might fear that becoming too invested in the relationship could compromise his independence. So when he creates distance, it's not about not caring. It's about trying to balance his own needs with the emotional connection he's feeling. Men often feel a strong pressure to be the perfect partner, especially when they start falling for someone. The idea of living up to your expectations and being the ideal companion can create anxiety. When a man starts to care deeply for you, he begins thinking about how he can be the best partner possible. This fear of not measuring up might make him pull away temporarily to figure out how to meet those expectations. When he distances himself, it's often because he feels like he needs to take a step back and address any self-doubt. This retreat is his way of regrouping, taking a moment to reassess, and getting back into the mindset of being the person he believes you deserve. It's not about not caring. It's about trying to become the best version of himself for the relationship. Sometimes, men distance themselves to test how much you truly care about them. It may sound counterintuitive, but pulling away can actually be his way of seeing if you'll pursue him or if you're genuinely invested in the relationship. If he's unsure of your feelings, he might distance himself to gauge how you react. This behavior is his way of testing the waters before fully diving in emotionally. He wants to see if you'll chase after him, or if you'll keep your distance. It's not about playing games. It's simply his way of figuring out where you stand and if you're as committed as he is. Acting distant doesn't necessarily mean he's not interested. Often, it's just his way of processing his emotions and protecting himself. So, the next time a guy pulls back, remember, it's not about you. It's about how he's navigating his feelings. Did this video help you understand the mystery behind his distant behavior? Don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who might need to hear this. And if you want more relationship tips that actually make sense, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next.